I want to call to order the Amberley Village Council meeting of June 13th, 2022. Please call the roll.
Richard Bardak. Here. Ben Hunt.
Here.
Tom Muthing.
Here.
Keely Paul. Here. Jay Schatz.
Here.
Scott Larmer.
Here.
Andrew Kakey.
Here.
And if everyone could please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome everyone to our meeting. We're going to have to be a little flexible on our agenda this evening. We are scheduled to have some employee service recognition awards, but as indicated by the weather, a number of our employees are out responding to calls, and so we're just going to kind of be flexible around this. First item on our agenda is our minutes from our last meeting. Those were circulated in advance. Are there any comments on the minutes? Seeing none, we can consider the minutes approved. Next item is our finance report for April 2022.
In addition to the UAN report for the month of April, I prepared a memo that was in your packet, just giving some highlights from the general fund primarily. And as we talk about each month with the Finance Committee, the earnings tax is the revenue source that we focus on. For the month of April, the village took in $1.1 million in earnings tax. Obviously, this is our largest month of the year because that is the due date for income tax, earnings tax. Year-to-date collections are $1.8 million. So we've collected 53% of the estimate. The estimate was $3.4 million, so we're sitting at that 53% mark. We did not receive any property tax during the month of April. We did receive local government funds in the amount of $5,200. That is a revenue source that comes to the state of Ohio, and in total, we receive about $69,000 from that source of revenue. So the total general fund revenues that came in during the year-to-date for through the end of April total $1.2 million. The revenue estimate for the entire year is 5.7, so we're sitting at 2.8 year-to-date, 1.2 for the month of April, so we're at that 50% mark for all of our general fund revenue for the village. On the expense side, the month of April expenses were about $425,000, and our budget for this year is $6.1 million, and we've expended already a little over $1.9 million. So we're sitting at about a 32% level in terms of what has been expended thus far through April. And we ended the month of April with an unencumbered general fund balance of $6.3 million. And that includes my finance report.
Are there any questions for the manager? If not, we'll move on to the service recognition awards. And again, we're going to be flexible on this and kind of take them as they come. So we have 7 awards that we were scheduled for this evening. At this point, one of the employees is with us, and so we will recognize her. This is a program that the manager started this year. It was well overdue. We are fortunate in the village to have a lot of employees with long-term service, and that really means we're getting exceptional service from our employees, but we just get even that greater exceptional service because of their long-term service. So I applaud the village manager for starting this program, and we have 7 this evening, and they will get their award. If they don't get it tonight, they will get their award.
Thanks, Mayor. So I'd like to ask the mayor to come down, and the first employee I'd like to recognize is Kathy Harcourt. So come on up, Kathy. So Kathy Harcourt began her public sector career with a brief stint in the Hamilton County Auditor's Office. But on June 22nd of 2007, she was officially the Amberley Village Tax Administrator. So before she was recruited to fill Amberley's position, Kathy had worked nearly 23 years with H&R Block. And certainly with her extensive tax knowledge, Kathy brought some outdated processes up to date here at the village. And Kathy served in the role as our tax administrator for 5 years before she was promoted to our finance administrator. And she remains in that position today. So she is celebrating 15 years with the village. Now, in addition to Kathy's responsibilities as finance administrator, she also provides human resource services to our employees. She processes biweekly payroll, so she's loved by the employees. She oversees the village audits. So every 2 years, the village is audited, so she oversees that. And she is also our workers' comp administrator. And then Kathy also takes part in our monthly council finance committee meetings, so she's present at each of those monthly meetings. Kathy is certified in the Ohio Public Finance Officers Program, and she has obtained her designation as a certified public finance administrator. And Kathy has been active in the Greater Cincinnati chapter of the Ohio Government Finance Officers Association, and she has served locally as the secretary and also as the chair of that organization. Well, Kathy grew up in Cincinnati. She graduated from Our Lady of Angels in St. Bernard. And staying in town, Kathy received her Bachelor of Arts degree in French from Thomas More College. And after 4 years of teaching French and history at Marion High School, she moved to the field of tax preparation. Quite a career switch. Quite a career switch. Kathy and her husband Dave raised 3 sons, and they were very active in Boy Scouts, Cub Scouts, as well as PTA. She has 1 grandson, and Kathy is currently active in her local church and volunteers extensively in their food pantry. So we're celebrating 15 years with Kathy Harcourt tonight. Thank you for your service, Kathy. Well, as the mayor said, the rest of our employees are not here. So I think we do have the family of one of our members here. But I think we'll just sort of maybe go on and come back if they are able to come back to the meeting. Okay, thank you.
Okay. We had 2 citizens to speak this evening. One of them is not here, and our former Councilman Warren was here as part of, he wanted to speak on recognition of both Scott and Natalie Wolf. So I think we will hold that till just before the recognitions also. So again, we're being flexible. So we'll move on to committee reports, and as the chair of the Finance Committee, I will present the Finance Committee report. Tonight, we have before us the 2023 tax budget, which is a budget that we submit annually to the Hamilton County Auditor's Office. The purpose of the tax budget is to basically demonstrate the village does have the need for the revenues that we get from property taxes, et cetera. It is a process that the village goes through every year. Basically, the way we prepare the budget for the tax budget is we take our 2022 budget in this case and we make a couple adjustments, and that is submitted for the tax budget. Our main budgeting exercise that we go through for the village is in October and November. So this tax budget is a bit of bureaucracy, and so it's something that doesn't have a lot of meaning to the village. But as part of the process, we must hold a public hearing. So any member of the public has the right to speak on the tax budget if they would so choose. So I would like to hereby open the public hearing for the tax budget, and it is currently 6:41, so I'm opening the public hearing at 6:41. Is there anyone that would like to speak on the tax budget? Seeing no one that wants to speak, I will hereby close the public hearing at 6:41. So, as part of the tax budget, it is required that we approve the tax budget as a council, and then we submit that to the county. So I would like to make a motion to approve the tax budget as submitted. Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we approve the tax budget as submitted. Are there any questions or comments? If not, it has been moved and seconded that we approve the tax budget through Resolution 2022-16. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Be it noted that that resolution passed unanimously. The only other thing I wanted to mention with respect to the Finance Committee met last week. The purpose of this meeting was to go over kind of the fees that we charge as a village for various services. This was something that was requested. There's been a memo issued by the village manager to all council members, and the committee went through those. One of the topics that we visited at 2 other points over the past 10 years is whether we should charge for parking fees for non-residents down at Amberley Green. The committee agreed with the prior decisions that for insurance reasons and various other reasons, we wanted to continue the practice of not charging for that. Another area for fees that we differ from a lot of communities is on fees for residents that's submitting for building permits or applications for variances to the building code. The principle for the village has been, we don't want to nickel and dime our residents in charging fees for that. I think the committee felt as long as there's not abuse of this, then this practice made sense, so the committee endorsed continuing that practice. Another issue that was discussed was whether we should be charging fees for the baseball fields and the use thereof. And again, at least the upper baseball field, that was a field donated by residents some 25, 30, maybe even 35, 40 years ago. And it was donated in order for the community to be able to use the field. The reservation for the fields is managed by a volunteer system because the village just does not have the staff to handle that. And it is made available to primarily teams from Nativity and from Pleasant Ridge Montessori, which again, the principle being we want to make the field available to children in the community, and those are the 2 schools that are attended the most by our village students. So at this point, the committee felt that we should continue with the same practice. The 2 areas that we noted where we do charge fees, one is for the tennis courts, and that is done because that requires cards, and we had to put locks on there, and it's a good way of controlling access to the courts. And the other is for the Amberley Garden, and that was a practice that was suggested by the gardeners, and the reason being is they want to ensure that we have very serious gardeners it's a relatively small fee. It's $50 for a plot. And the gardeners felt that that is something they wanted to continue. And it has worked well. And that also helps pay for the maintenance of the garden. So the committee at this point basically recommended that we continue with the fees as we have them now, and that's something we can revisit at any point. Are there any questions or comments?
I think, Mayor, well, first of all, thank you, Scott, for the report and the comprehensive nature. I just want to throw out there, and we're not going to resolve it tonight, is it would be interesting as we continue to look at Amberley Green uses and moving forward, how that parking situation could change if a non-for-profit began to play a role in the park. I know that's complicated, but I hope that's on the table as we
Yes.
look at Friends of Amberley or whatever that group is. So where do we stand? I mean, none of that really addresses the scheduling issue, and you said our resident is not going to be here to talk about it?
They're not here,
Okay.
so
You know, it does seem that that's a legitimate issue for us to take up in terms of how it's scheduled.
Yeah,
And,
I mean, the only thing, I think we can schedule public buildings and
Sure.
parks with that. I mean, it's been the practice for a long time.
Sure.
But I think one thing we need to ensure is if there are other groups that want to
Right.
be involved,
Right.
that we have a process that they can be involved.
right, I, as an at-large member, I can't justify our current policy in explaining that to other members of the community. It's just, I tried, and I can't. And I also think the issue of fees, I mean, everybody else is charging, and if it's, 10 games at $45, that's $450 that goes towards the maintenance of that.
Okay, we will schedule
Yeah.
public buildings and parks on that.
Yeah.
One of the, so, my sports knowledge would fit in a tiny little thimble. But one of the things, being on the Parks Committee that was brought up, is because it is volunteer run, all the scheduling, one of the biggest problems they have is events like tonight where you have a storm. And so you can never get to like a packed schedule because you have constant rescheduling. I understand that most of you probably are like, of course, but this was news to me. So it was something that I learned that schedule actually takes a lot of time to manage.
Sure.
So it's actually a big job for a volunteer.
Absolutely.
Okay, anything else? Okay, we'll next move on to okay, thanks for your patience. We're back up, and I ask Councilman Hunt to start from the beginning on his report.
All right, thank you again, Mr. Mayor. First, for the Compensation and Benefits Committee, I just wanted to mention that we met on May 11th, and we had two topics that we wanted to present this evening to Council. The first of those was regarding the presentation from Horan Financial regarding employee health insurance program that's managed through Jefferson Health. The big note was that there was a 0% increase in the annual cost to employees in the village for the next year. This was a result of deferred medical treatments due to COVID-19, so they were mentioning that they do expect that number will catch back up in the following years. There was also a reduction in pharmacy costs and savings as well, the result of the Beacon program that began in the past year. They also explained they rebid the dental program for employees, and that the Dental Care Plus plan that employees have already been on will continue to be the best fit for the village, and so that will be renewed after being shopped around against similar programs. So first item of business this evening is I would like to offer Resolution 2022-17 to provide for village employees a health insurance and contribution to employee health savings accounts.
Okay, it has been moved and seconded that we approved Resolution 2022-17, which basically puts in place our health insurance and health savings account. Any questions or comments? I mean, it is worth noting this will be the second straight year that employees will see a 0% increase, which is quite an accomplishment.
Yep.
And I think in addition to the reasons that Councilman Hunt mentioned, our self-funding program that we participate in with 19 other communities continues to be very successful, and the reserve balance is growing significantly. So hopefully that means even when some of the costs start catching up, we'll be.
Sit around a table and hear what the employees were requesting, what we were able to fiscally look at from a financial basis. We know that we have wonderful employees here in Amberley Village, and we know that we want to make sure that their compensation remains competitive with neighboring villages and municipalities. So in that portion of our meeting, we heard from the village manager, comparison of where Amberley pay compensation ranks against other communities. We also got to hear from the employees and their request for a raise as well as additional benefit pieces. So there were kind of a couple of layers, and one thing I do want to note here was that as part of that conversation, we did kind of front burner the ability to talk about the compensation piece, because that needed to happen as quickly as possible. There was a second piece that the employees raised that we requested as part of that meeting to revisit sometime later in the summer in order to discuss sick time, and there's some questions about how sick time is accrued and how personal time is used. So that I do just want to make sure that that's part of the record here, that was a conversation that we want to have again very soon. So with that said, the compromise where we kind of landed, the committee agreed that the council should approve an employee wage increase of 3.5% to employees' base salary, and that includes fire pay, with a $1,250 lump sum payment as well to help account for the inflationary pressures that all of us are feeling. We know that cash in their pocket is well-deserved and during these tough and uncertain financial times. So with that, I'd like to make a motion for ordinance 2022-3. But first, I do want to waive the 3 readings that would be required for that in order to make it approved immediately.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we waive the 3 readings with respect to ordinance 2022-3. And it's worth noting that normally we would be doing this in March of every year. The employees' annual pay cycle is April 1. The employees asked us to delay this till this time, but it will be retroactive to April 1. So it has been moved and seconded that we waive the 3 readings with respect to ordinance 2022-3. Are there any questions or comments?
A question, and I apologize for not knowing the answer. How is this handled in our budget?
In our
budget, have we set money aside, and is this in line, or are we above?
The budget assumed a 2% increase, but the feeling was
Sure.
that we'll be able to find ways to offset that.
Absolutely, sure. Good. Thank you for the work on this.
Okay, any other questions or comments? If not, it has been moved and seconded that we waive the 3 readings with respect to ordinance 2022-3. Please call the roll.
Richard Bardak. Ben Hunt.
Yes.
Tom Muthing.
Yes.
Keely Paul. Yes. Jay Schatz.
Yes.
All right, and then with that, I would then like to make a motion to consider ordinance 2022-3, establishing compensation for village employees and declaring an emergency. In order for that passage,
The emergency will be a separate.
okay. Apologies. So establishing 2022-3, establishing compensation for village employees.
Seconded.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we approve ordinance 2022-3 establishing compensation for our village employees. Are there any questions or comments? If not, it's been moved and seconded that we approve ordinance 2022-3. Please call the roll.
Richard Bardak. Ben Hunt.
Yes.
Tom Muthing.
Yes.
Keely Paul. Jay Schatz.
Yes.
All right, and now I would like to make a motion regarding ordinance 2022-3, declaring an emergency so that it can be approved retroactively, actually back to April 1st.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we approve ordinance 2022-3 as an emergency measure to allow it to go into effect immediately. Are there any questions or comments? If not, it has been moved and seconded that we approve ordinance 2022-3 as an emergency measure. Please call the roll.
Richard Bardak. Ben Hunt.
Yes.
Tom Muthing.
Yes.
Keely Paul. Jay Schatz.
Yes.
All right, and that concludes my report.
Okay, well, I hope you're not tired of talking because you're also on the hook for the next one, the We Thrive Health and Wellness Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So we wanted to give a quick update to the community regarding the Health and Wellness Committee. The two big initiatives that the committee has been working on this year involve yoga and Pick-Up Pickleball. So far, we've had 2 sessions of yoga since we began at the beginning of May. Unfortunately, weather caused 3 weeks of cancellations. So during those 2 sessions, we've had great turnout. We are very thankful for our continued support from the JCC in providing an instructor for that. So just as a reminder, yoga from the We Thrive Committee takes place on Wednesdays from 6:30 till 7:30 here on the municipal lawn. And then afterwards, there's a half hour of meditation that is also being led by our instructor from the JCC. So again, every Wednesday, 6:30 to 7:30 here at the municipal lawn. The other activity is Pick-Up Pickleball, and it held its first session last week, and we had great turnout for the first week. And we're hoping that the weather cooperates with us tomorrow so we can have another great night of Pick-Up Pickleball. That happens on Tuesdays from 6:30 until 8 here on the tennis courts next to Village Hall. That concludes my report.
Are there any questions?
Were there any issues with the allocation of pickleball?
There were no tennis players on the tennis courts, just pickleball players.
Thank you.
Yep.
I also have something from the
Okay, we'll cover it under new business. If just, it's important, if we want it on the agenda, make sure that you inform Tammy that'll be on the agenda. Okay. We'll now move on to the manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor. It's unfortunate that of our employee recognition tonight, we had 7 to recognize, and 5 of them are doing additional duty because of the storms. But I did want to bring attention to Robin Kemp. So Robin has been our administrative assistant in the police department. She has also been our mayor's court clerk, and she is retiring after 32 years with Amberley Village. And the mayor has a proclamation. And maybe it's appropriate to maybe read the proclamation so that residents can hear about that. Maybe?
Definitely do that. Be it proclaimed, whereas Robin Kemp has served as clerk of courts and administrative assistant to the chief of police in Amberley Village for the past 32 years, and whereas Robin has proven herself a valuable asset and ambassador of the village to municipalities throughout the greater Cincinnati region, and whereas Robin has faithfully performed her duties, gained valuable institutional knowledge, and supported her colleagues throughout her tenure at Amberley Village, and whereas Robin has earned the respect and appreciation of all who have had the privilege of working with her, and whereas Robin has fulfilled the required service for eligibility to retire with honor, dignity, and impeccable attention to detail and care, and whereas Robin will serve her last day as an Amberley Village employee before embarking on a move to Florida to enjoy her retirement with her family. Now therefore, I, Thomas C. Muthing, Mayor of Amberley Village, do hereby proclaim June 14, 2022 as Robin Kemp Day in Amberley Village. And the one thing I at her retirement party last week, it was very impressive. You know, these words came through abundantly clear. I mean, you had people there who Robin had helped in other communities, and the employees speaking about what Robin has done for them through the years. It really is very impressive. And it's, again, you know, I noted at the beginning how lucky we are as Amberley employees to have the long service employees and the very dedicated employees that are out there serving through the storm. But sitting at her retirement party, again, was a case where it showed it so clearly. So Robin will be missed, but I'm sure she's going to enjoy her retirement.
Thank you, Mayor. And so for the employees that were not able to make it tonight to be recognized, we will be able to schedule them. But as the mayor said, Robin is relocating, so I think we probably have lost our opportunity to recognize her publicly here in the council chamber. So thank you, Mayor, for sharing that. I did want to bring attention to a couple items out of the manager's report. One is street sweeping. You know, street sweeping occurs usually once or twice a year here in the village. We do not have our own street sweepers, so we contract out that service. This year we tried something a little different. We actually contracted with the city of Reading. So Reading has a street sweeper, and they were able to sweep the majority of the streets in the village during the month of May. Typically, you don't see street sweepers because they will start either early in the morning when there's not traffic, or maybe possibly even late at night. But we're appreciative of being able to make an arrangement with the city of Reading to cover our streets. And the second item I wanted to bring attention to is the Farm Crest Street reconstruction, which council has worked on for years. That project is beginning to take place later this month, and we're actually having a meeting with the residents on this Monday, June the 20th, with the residents. This is the final meeting before we kick off the reconstruction of the streets, both north and south Farm Crest and part of Kincaid. This is nearly a $2 million project and is a very significant investment in our infrastructure. So we'll be meeting with the residents on Monday night to answer any questions, tell them what they can anticipate. We'll also have the contractor on site for the residents to see who that is, so that they can ask those types of questions as to how they're going to be affected. So we're really looking forward to the start of that project. It has been delayed a bit because of, like everything, there are supply issues. And so consequently, the work that was going to start in the spring is not getting started until later this month. That will include some of the water work, and then some of the stormwater work will be done. And we really don't anticipate significant street reconstruction to occur until the spring. Originally, we had planned to have all that done during the fall, but the schedule had to be adjusted due to that. And then the third item I wanted to mention is we have a similar investment in our infrastructure going on in the Elbrook, Meadow Ridge, and Bluegrass area. Now, this is a water main replacement and fire hydrant replacement, and also a street resurfacing. And this is part of the Village Council's plan to improve infrastructure in the village over an 8-year period. We refer to it as the Accelerated Street Program, where several $1 million, almost $8 million, are being committed to street improvements. So Elbrook is really that third leg of the improvement that is occurring. And this portion of Elbrook is on the south end. So this will be from Section going south. And then Elbrook, the north end, will be another particular year. But this project is getting started. It's actually underway right now with Greater Cincinnati Water Works replacing water main. And then we expect that in the summer, late summer, we should be underway with resurfacing of those three streets. That concludes my report, Mayor.
Are there any questions for the manager? None? The chief's not here?
No.
For Mayor's report, I'll keep it short. Um, One thing I wanted to note is I attended the last meeting of the Human Rights Commission, and the Human Rights Commission wanted to thank council for the resolution passed at the May meeting declaring that June would be Pride Month, so that was very much recognized. The other thing related that they noted that one thing they're going to work on over the next year is some education and so forth with respect to Juneteenth. And I don't know, for those that get the Enquirer, there was an excellent kind of education for people like me that need to be educated more on things like Juneteenth. And that is something I think that the Human Rights Commission will really help us all out on something like that. And they're excited about working on that over the next year. The only other thing I want to mention is that the next meeting of the Environmental Stewardship Committee, and I see 2 members here, is currently scheduled for June 27th, but I may be trying to get the meeting date changed, and so keep an eye out for that. And that concludes my mayor's report. Are there any questions or comments? If not, now we'll move on to the important thing on the agenda this evening, and that is recognition of 2 people that have contributed immensely to the village over these past years. So, I ask first that Scott Wolf come forward. I'll meet you over there. Scott Wolf has served on the planning commission for 14 or 15 years, and I didn't even realize that Scott filled the term of my dad. So, very neat on that. But one thing Amberley Village has been very fortunate, not only for you serving on this commission, and you served on that, and I know before I served on council, I saw you were doing something for Amberley Green. And the one thing I've seen as I've gone to annual meetings of be it the JCC or other Jewish organizations, every time I go to one of those meetings, I see past members of the board, and your name appears on everything. And your name appears in awards for everything and so forth. So it's very obvious that you are very committed to your community. And we've been very lucky to have you so willing to do that. And I know Councilman Barta is going to miss you on the planning commission. He had to leave this evening, but when he heard that you were moving, his first comment to me was, "You better get a good person." Because he very much values that. So, as recognition of your service, please accept this. Okay, Vice Mayor.
Am I still the vice mayor?
You're always Vice Mayor. Okay. Natalie and I joined council at the same time, and I thoroughly enjoyed working with Natalie for years. And I knew, I didn't even need this list. I knew you had served on just about every committee that we have on council. When I saw this list, it kind of, not only did you serve on it, well, I think you probably but you not only served on it, you chaired many of the committees. And I think that is reflective of Natalie's willingness to pitch trying to move now into a different committee. It was because, you know, at times we just needed somebody to help on different things, and you very much, you know, every time you chaired a committee, you poured your soul into it. And I definitely, and you helped, again, teach some of us. I know you did. I know on the health education and welfare committee, you definitely helped educate me on many things. And the other thing that, you know, I mentioned when Councilwoman Conway left, that she sat next to me and very much helped me out. The thing I'm going to miss, and I don't know how I'm going to get this, is you very much helped me with pronunciation of
Jewish holidays.
holidays and things like that. And I guess Bob Rose and I but I really have enjoyed serving with you. It's been a lot of fun.
I feel the same way. Thank you.
And then, hey, you can say something, and Councilman Warren will also say. He's gone with it.
Just moved, and now we have stuff. We don't know what to do with this stuff, but we are appreciative. So anyway, I at the April meeting when I surprised you all and with our move, I said I would have something to say in May, and then COVID happened. But I wanted to say that it's been an honor, a privilege, and mostly a pleasure serving the citizens of Amberley Village Council as a council person and vice mayor since 2011. I never, ever imagined that I would continue to serve for more than 3 terms. I had 3 terms in my mind, and that would be long enough. But as long as I felt that there was still work to do, or that I had new ideas that could be explored, I kept at it. I think the thing that made my service in Amberley so rewarding for all of this time was my ability to imagine the type of community that I wanted to live in, and to be fortunate enough to realize that being on council, I would be in the position to try to make that community happen. I've told this story a few times since it happened, but when I was gathering signatures last July to be on the ballot for November, I was at Monica Lira's house and Cindy Barr on Long Meadow, and I looked out their backyard window, and I saw a lot of chickens running around in, like, there's 4 or 5 contiguous backyards. And the chickens belonged to a neighbor, the next door neighbor, who was not an Amberley resident back in 2012 when I brought the backyard chicken ordinance to council. So, I mean, that's the kind of tangible thing that I love to see in Amberley Village, that things I can point to and say, I made a difference. I brought chickens to Amberley, or I made crossing the street safer at the corner of Ridge and Section because I have been so insistent on thinking about pedestrian safety. And speaking of which, in all of those years promoting pedestrian safety in Amberley and nagging about it and doing everything on every committee that I could, because that was my agenda anywhere that I thought that I could somehow make a difference to runners and walkers and people on the street, pushing for speed humps and traffic calming measures, including the pedestrian safety resolution. And I want to say that I had real tears in my eyes when it was announced that finally the North and South Farm Crest streets were going to be repaired and include the traffic calming island. And so I do have to ask Scott, what traffic calming measures are being taken on Elbrook with the new street repairs?
There aren't any on Elbrook. Yeah.
Not yet. But one of my proudest achievements was also one of my biggest disappointments on council, and that is the Human Rights Ordinance. And while the Human Rights Commission has become, in my opinion, one of the shining stars of the village, there's still a ways to go till we become a community that completely accepts diversity. And it's definitely a task that I'm leaving here unfinished. And I'm hoping that there are going to be people in the future who step up and want to continue that work. I've really enjoyed getting to know every one of you. Tom, sitting next to you for all of these years, definitely going to miss that. Chief, Scott, Tammy, and everybody else. It would never have occurred to me before being on council that you could just call the police to come and identify an animal carcass in your backyard, or to come and help rescue a baby deer out of your neighbor's window well because nobody was home. But I'm grateful for all of those things. They make Amberley so unique. And that's it. So thank you, everyone. It's really been a privilege.
Mr. Warren. Mr. Warren had asked to also address council with respect to the recognition.
So actually the irony, my name is Ray Warren. I live at 6715 West Farm Acres Drive. The irony of what I'm going to share over the next, 2 minutes was actually just almost captured by Natalie. So, but anyway, it's okay. But now you're going to hear kind of a different nuance to it. So I'd like to say a few words on the departure of Natalie and Scott Wolf from the village. Scott, I don't know if you remember this, but Scott, together with Louis Katz, is probably responsible for me running for council back in 2011. I think of all the people that were recruited to run that year, I had the most challenging and ultimately the most contested race, winning by 24 votes out of 1,400 votes cast. Scott, Louis, and Natalie taught me how to run for office. I had the pleasure of working with Natalie for 10 years on council. While Tom was on one side, I was on the other side. And as we know, Natalie was vice mayor during this entire period. I can safely say Natalie had a significant impact on residential life during my tenure. She took what I would call a sleepy and possible moribund health, education, welfare committee and transformed it into a platform for change in the village. Natalie's focus always had to do with addressing the question, how can I improve the quality of life in the village? Whether this was allowing chickens, to codifying residential connectivity and pedestrian safety, to, I believe, helping to create the village garden, among so many other items. Perhaps most importantly, she created an atmosphere and gave license for possibilities. Natalie also used her pulpit to promote human rights and dignity for all residents and workers in this village. The Human Rights Commission is Natalie's Human Rights Commission. Natalie was also a member of the Land Committee and together with Mayor Muthing spent countless hours trying to work a plan for considering some type of potential development for Amberley Green that would benefit all residents of the village. Unfortunately, this was one item we didn't have enough votes to pass. What Natalie taught me while I was on council was that despite being a small community, if you're focused on a goal, enlist residents to your goal, and have a dash of perseverance, you have a good shot at obtaining that goal and ultimately having a real impact on the quality of life in Amberley Village. Thanks for your service, Natalie and Scott.
Okay, we'll adjourn to the reception in a second, but you wanted to? Okay, you cover that. Okay, is there any other new business? If not, we can consider the meeting adjourned, and please, we're having a reception out in the hallway.